In 1971, Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson created a character named Alex Olson, a scientist who turned into a plant monster called Swamp Thing for DC Comics in House of Secrets number 92. When the character was given his own series, the pair altered his origin, brought him into the modern day, and renamed him Alec Holland. Swamp Thing has undergone many changes during his many series. Some of the character's most notable changes came from Watchmen and V for Vendetta creator Alan Moore. Moore gave Holland's transformation a surprising and intelligent twist in the issue Anatomy Lesson. The character has been featured in 2 films, a television series, and an animation, and is rumored to have a part in the future of the DC Cinematic Universe. This week on Real Comic Heroes, Swamp Thing. Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another adventure of the Real Comic Heroes podcast. I'm Travis.
And I'm Patrick.
And we are coming to you, not live.
Live from the den of nerds.
From the bowels of a comic book store. And we are joined by a guest.
My name is Warner Swopes. I'm from Nerd Management Podcast.
I guess I set you up horribly for that.
No, that's fine.
I thought the hand gesture
don't. Yeah, definitely don't feel like there's any pressure at all to put on a good podcast, because if you haven't heard ours, it is a dumpster fire. So, but we pride ourselves in that.
I love your guys' podcast.
It's we love it too, but we normally think that it's just us.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a marketing major, but calling one's podcast a dumpster fire kind of sounds like a weird way to market.
You know, it draws people's attention, and then it sets them up so they're not disappointed by just our absolute train wreck that is our podcast.
Set them low, get them high.
We have fun, though. We have fun.
Okay.
We actually attended your, I guess, podcast seminar at what was it?
Comic-Con.
Oh,
Indiana Comic-Con, like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was before we actually had talked about doing a podcast. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. I had a lot of fun with that. No, I mean, we really like we have a good time with our podcast. People like it, and we're glad that people do. It's just us just being us. So I hope I don't.
It's a good show.
I hope I don't sink your podcast too bad by just derailing.
Nope.
That's my job.
Yeah. All right, so we're here to talk about Swamp Thing.
Circa 1982,
82 or 81?
82. Yeah, it was like right at like the beginning of 82. Yeah. I think they started filming in 80, like the summer of 82.
Yeah. I think I saw that came out in December of 81, so right at the tail end.
Yeah, because they started filming in May of 81. That's
okay.
Right. It was so rushed, and you can tell when you watch the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know this was a Wes Craven flick.
Yeah, it's his first, it's tied with, I can't even remember the other, I wrote it down somewhere. There's another movie that it's tied for first. I guess he did this in another movie and was this is not good. But while he was doing this, it actually inspired him for Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. I read that today, that he did this back to back with something else.
I guess I didn't write it down.
Yeah.
But
I guess he did The Hills Have Eyes before this.
Oh, okay.
But it was like his first Hollywood movie.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is the first movie he had money for.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they cut his money about halfway through filming, and that kind of ruined things.
So this is I don't usually equate him with sci-fi.
Yeah.
So I guess this is kind of like a mix of sci and horror.
Well, he had this idea to try to, and I guess he hadn't read anything about Swamp Thing prior to this project, and really didn't know anything until they gave it to him, and then he's like, okay, I'll do some research. Well, then when he read the comics, he's like, this is way more sci-fi than horror, and he wanted to kind of tie it all together, and I mean, he did the best he could with what he had.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it gave me like an old school monster movie.
Yeah,
The Mummy or because it was just like the monster.
Yeah.
Well, he originally wanted to film in the same, like the lagoon they had created in Hollywood for Creature from the Black Lagoon. Because I guess even in 81, it was still there.
Yeah,
and
but it was too small or something?
It was too small, yeah. So they ended up going to, where were they?
Carolina.
South Carolina. And I didn't even know there were swamps in South Carolina. So there you go.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. It's kind of close to Florida, and Florida's basically a swamp of humanity.
I remember in one of it was like a documentary or something, some of the cast was saying that people there were treating alligators like people in New York would treat pigeons.
Yeah.
Just like, they're just there, and you just, like, that seems so crazy to me.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, what is that? Somewhere in the east, there's like all those monkeys that hang out by the temples.
Like
Same
Tibet,
thing. They're like squirrels.
Yeah.
Just like, man. Face-ripping monkeys.
Yeah, and they're just...
Or face-raping monkeys.
Yeah. And they're all just hanging out. And if you're not a local, they may actually do one of those two things to your face.
Yeah. Okay. As usual, I take it off the rails.
That's fine.
There we go.
Let's see.
So Swamp Thing.
Swamp Thing, yeah. I guess
you want to
make sure your act breaks line up with mine.
I sort of did the end of Act 1 is when the doc goes into the swamp.
Yeah.
We both agreed that's like the perfect point for end of Act 1.
And end of Act 2 is when they get caught.
Yeah. When I talked to you, I had said that right when he loses his arm.
Yeah.
But then as I rewatched it last night, I think it does make more sense to end it.
Well, because
end of Act 2 when they get captured, and then it transitions to the dinner.
And I can say Act 2 or Act 3. I put it in Act 3 because of that, but the reason it's confusing as to where that break is there's this really awkward scene kind of between 2 and 3 that doesn't really fit, and it's very bizarre.
Yeah. But we'll get there.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. You want to jump in?
Just
give us one of your points for Act 1. Yeah.
So, Adrian Barbeau played Alice Cable, who's not a real character from the comic books.
Cable, what the hell is your story?
Charlie, did anything suspicious happen while we were gone?
You're damn right. Something suspicious did happen. A stupid broad of an agent, first day on the job, takes the scientists we're all supposed to be guarding for an unguarded romp in the bush.
Hold it.
You think you're on a picnic or something?
Wait a minute, Ritter. It was my idea to take her out there. She was just doing her job. What do you have to be so worried all the time for?
Because it's my job to worry. And if I have my way, and by God I will, you'll be on the next chopper back to Washington. A woman has no place around a guy like you.
Basically, I guess Wes Craven had, read enough to be familiar with some of the names, because it's essentially, Swamp Thing's Alec Holland's best friend in the original Len Wein series is a guy named Matt Cable, and basically the entire run of Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson Swamp Thing it's like a I'm gonna avenge my friend kind of story, and where Matt Cable actually is a really big supporting character, and he's essentially chasing Swamp Thing this entire time because he thinks Swamp Thing killed his friend, and so I think that's got to be where he got it from, but it just seems so weird because, and I think I was telling you guys I'll talk to you again when we watch Return of the Swamp Thing, but they kind of correct that in Return of the Swamp Thing and actually bring in Abigail Arcane, who is the love interest of Swamp Thing and would have made way more sense in this movie, but for whatever reason he just makes up the character.
I read that she was a mix between Abby and Matt.
Yeah. Well, she is, because in that first act, she's kind of like scared of him and like, what did you do to Alec Holland?
Yeah, it's true.
So he kind of just combined those two characters, but I would never consider like trying to make a female version of Matt Cable the love interest of Swamp Thing. So that was something that stuck out to me watching it again. I was like, yeah, that's kind of weird.
Okay.
I'm glad I went in ignorant.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of that stuff.
I guess we talked about it before we started, but what did you know about Swamp Thing going into it?
I thought, it was like a weird accident thing, like Toxic Avenger.
Sure.
The other one I thought was that it was like an ancient god of some sort of of nature.
I've got all kinds of stuff I can tell you about. Eventually, yes,
we can
that's
talk
true.
About that.
Okay.
Eventually, that's true.
That's what I thought when they opened the bunker of whirling lights and
Okay.
doodads. I thought it was there to because they captured it.
Oh, okay.
because I didn't understand why there was a lab
Yeah.
in the swamp
Yeah.
so secure. So I thought they captured something
Okay.
that they couldn't understand and were studying it.
Yeah.
Which is why I was really confused at the beginning
Yeah.
of this movie, because I didn't know where I was going.
Well, the movie starts off with that weird, what do you call it? Not
scene?
opening crawl like Star Wars, but it starts off with that text about in the swamps there's a monster.
Yeah, that added to my
and it makes it sound like he's already, been created and he's already out there. So that's confusing, I think.
Yeah, I get it now after watching what that text meant, but I thought I was right with the whole ancient god thing or something.
Even watching it again recently, and like I said, I've seen this movie probably like 2 or 3 dozen times.
Yeah.
Like I've just seen this movie so many times. But even watching it again this week, I was just like, some of this stuff just flat out doesn't make sense. Like, and it's not. It's part of it's just the rush of the film, and they had to like meet their deadlines, and their budget was cut so much that he had to cut so much from the movie, and it really suffers for that. But it is so confusing, and sometimes hard to watch, and understand unless you're a fan of it or you've done some research. But it can be confusing.
Yeah, I was confused until the liquid got made, and I was like, okay, this is going to spill on somebody and make Swamp Thing. But up to that point, I kept searching for like a monster that's already there that may or may not be a god of some sort.
Well, I've read I
swear I've heard you talk, and I think this is your fault, because I heard you talk about Batman and Swamp Thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought there was some kind of godly nature to Swamp Thing.
Basically, he can control all plant life on the planet.
So he's like Captain Planet.
And the big change that Alan Moore took the character through after this movie had come out is basically he changed it so that basically Alec Holland didn't become Swamp Thing. Alec Holland died, and the chemicals in the swamp took on his memories and his essence, and created an elemental god of nature called the Swamp Thing. And so, it essentially, both things are right.
It's a great run.
So
Alan
we hear
Moore
essence
run.
in this movie later that kind of makes sense with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That Alan Moore run is outstanding. Because that is, I don't want to, I guess I can spoil it. I mean, it's a series that people should read anyways.
Right.
But in that anatomy lesson issue that I was talking about, the scientist who's investigating it discovers that it's like a planarian worm that if you, just like little, one-celled worm, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you teach one to run a maze, and then you chop that one up and feed it to other planarian worms, those worms will then know how to run that maze.
Okay.
They absorb knowledge through, tissue, living tissue in the brain, matter, and so basically, like Warren was saying, the swamp itself, took in Alec Holland's memories and thoughts, his essence, and then that's what became Swamp Thing. So, but not for this movie, obviously.
Right.
and not even until 84?
Yeah, it would have been later in the 80s.
Not even in the 80s. Yeah. That's pretty incredible.
So I wasn't too far off. It was sort of the same thing, but it can be taken either way. Okay. But for this movie, it's Toxic Avenger goo.
Basically just a mutated man with some plant powers.
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me started.
And really, in the movie, he doesn't have so many plant powers, as he is just super strong and can heal people with glowing lights.
Yeah, and he can regrow himself.
Right.
But
with the power of the sun. I love that scene. We'll talk about that. We'll get there.
Do you want to hit a point?
Oh, I could do that. Let's see. This is the only reason I knew it was from 82 is because I saw, what's his name? Ferret.
Okay.
And I was immediately turned off by it because I thought he was trying to be Rambo.
Yeah, he was definitely a Rambo.
But I guess Rambo came out after this by a few months, so...
Oh.
How weird is that both characters wore that headband? And
Ferret is a character that I wish would have somehow eventually ended up in the comics because
I loved him.
He's such a cool character, and just he's really terrible at being a villain, but also is kind of badass.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Well, all those guys, it was it was confusing because I hadn't watched this movie for a year or two. So I didn't remember that there was this paramilitary group in the swamp running these I don't know, just hiding in the jungle or the swamps.
Working for this dude. And
yeah, I couldn't figure out why they were there, why they were being, so secretive. And
it was like a weekend militia group that just got together.
Very, very weekend warrior, especially Bruno, the guy with that, hat with some twigs hanging out of it. It's like, come on, man.
And Swamp Thing's just like flipping over their boats and stuff. It's great.
Yeah, that whole crew was just... That is a group of lackeys better be a really smart character behind them because...
Well, like, so much money put into their gear. Like he's saying, they're in, like, all this camo, and, like, they look like they're really militant. But then, like I said, they're thwarted by, like, their boat getting pushed over. And, like, that's the end of it.
And they're all in, like, their mid-40s. Yeah. And, like...
Yeah.
They don't look like
this is not their day job.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean...
But they're IT guys normally, and then just, like, on the weekend, they're bounty hunters, apparently.
I was impressed, though, when you first start seeing like, one or two of them in the trees. Like, it's convincing that they're... I mean, you don't see the rest of them until they start moving, and it's like, holy shit, there's another one,
Well, it's more the camo than them, really.
Right.
As long as the camo's doing his job, then they don't really have to be that sneaky.
They just gotta stand still. As long as they don't do that. And those guys didn't look like they get too much exercise.
Yeah, that's true. So I was really weird, like, because I knew that Linda was Alec Holland's wife in the comics, I was really confused at seeing Linda, and you meet Alec and you meet Linda, and then Alec starts putting the moves on Alice, and it's like, dude, your wife is standing right behind you, and then he asks her to go monitor, check some sensor, and then hits on her even more.
So much beauty in the swamps if you just open up your eyes to it. I mean, take a look into your own body, one of God's most magnificent creations, and what do you see? Straight lines and deodorant and chrome and formica? No. You see blood and bone, pump and flow, and a million messy miracles. I mean, just look at the most creative thing a man and a woman can do together, and you'll see something growing, unpredictable, magical, hot.
Just save the malarkey for your wife, Holland.
And then, it's revealed that they're brother and sister, and that's a weird change from the comics to the movie. It's like, why... I guess they don't want a love connection between him and Alice when he's married. It's just weird,
I already didn't like him because I think of him as from RoboCop and the devil from that...
the devil from Reaper,
Reaper.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah!
Yeah. That's very wise. I had
forgotten that.
So I automatically just assumed he was a sleazeball.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, your point about Act 1 comes, butts up right against my second point from Act 1, because there's a line where she said, Alice says, save the malarkey for your wife, when he's like, yeah. And that even makes it more confusing, because you're like, wait, what?
He doesn't correct her.
Right, he doesn't ever, there's at no point does he say, oh no, that's my sister. I mean, eventually, you find out that it's his sister, but he's not like, oh, she's not my wife, she's my sister. He just continues to hit on her, and it's really weird.
Yeah. It's a weird, shell game that they're playing for no reason, other than, I guess it's kind of cute when she finds out that, oh, you're not married. It's, the whole thing's just weird.
She's like, you're
unnecessary.
Sister?
And I've read interviews with Wes Craven, and by the time people have, it's become a cult film in the last 10 years, really. And so by the time that people have started interviewing him about him, he's so far removed from this that he doesn't even remember half the stuff. And he's like, I'm not even sure why that line's in there. Yeah. He's like, maybe I had referenced something that I ended up cutting. I don't know. Yeah. He's like, it doesn't make sense.
Well, that's good. Let's see. I guess the other point for Act 1, it seemed kind of... This is where I question the brains of the operation.
Yeah.
The way they treated the whole scene where they're all sort of stuck in that tiny room of the lab and getting the green goo and the books and everything together. Mm-hmm. How did he get free to get the glass and sort of... There was 8 dudes in that room, but got what's his face? Alec.
Yeah.
He got away from the people that were holding him back.
Okay.
I think it was when they shot his sister. He just ran for it. And he got the goo.
Which also
it just seemed like a weird scenario going on in there. Like, why would you kill the guy's sister?
He's like, they just shot my sister, but I'm definitely gonna beeline it for this stuff I've been working on.
It was a chaotic scene to me because I couldn't figure out what the hell was happening.
Yeah.
Like, all hell just broke loose for no reason. She just bolts, bang.
Yeah.
Oh, you stupid so-and-so, you're not smart as you think. Blah, blah, blah.
Maybe he figured if I grab the formula, then it's like leverage. Like they won't touch me if I've got this in my hands, kind of, because they know it's explosive.
That is true. I forgot about the exploding.
They know it's
power
dangerous,
of that.
and then obviously the what's his name, Ferret.
But he overestimates Ferret in like his regard for people.
But shouldn't he have blown up?
I mean, he
when it spilled on him?
Well,
he just caught fire.
Yeah.
Like one drop was like a firecracker. So
yeah.
You think it just blown him into bits? And
credits. More like a grenade instead of napalm. Yeah.
Because what did the guy say? You invented nitro or something?
Something like that. Yeah. Shredded nitro. But that flame stunt is amazing.
Yeah.
That was. And I'm sure they did it a couple times.
Yeah. Fun fact: that's the same guy that does the flame stunt from Nightmare on Elm Street when Freddy gets.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. Is it the same stunt guy that plays Swamp Thing or a different guy?
Different guy.
No, different guy. Yeah.
I read that he practiced at home, like in the swimming pool.
Yeah, he would like catch himself on fire and then jump into a swimming pool. Yeah, that dude just like likes being on fire apparently.
Because I tried to find like a cut, because it was a really long.
No, he just runs for like.
Well, like he goes like up the stairs and into that little room, and then he like comes out of the shack.
But that's the part that was impressive.
So it's definitely probably 2 shots, but it's it's 2 shots, both longer than I would want to be on fire.
And it wasn't just a little bit on fire.
No.
He's like
head
consumed.
to toe.
And I also like that this is a laboratory with highly flammable chemicals, and there's no other way to put out a fire other than like going upstairs and jumping out a window. That seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah, you think they'd have some kind of flame retardant chemicals around.
Or fire extinguisher, sprinkler system would be a real smart one.
Yeah.
I know there's specific like retardants for different chemicals.
Yeah.
But this is a super
they're not
new chemical that
Did you guys ever read the comic book The Nail?
No.
It's basically like there's a nail in the road when the Kents are going to find Superman's shuttle, they never do, and that changes the course of all of history. Like, I kind of think there could be a sequel to that where Alec Holland's laboratory just has sprinkler systems in it, and so the Swamp Thing never
like
comes to be.
Right, lab should.
Right, and so Swamp Thing never comes to be, and it's just about a scientist who caught on fire for a little bit, but he's okay now.
Yeah, because if he hadn't made it to the swamp and just died on the floor, he wouldn't have transformed into.
What would have happened to him though? Because they dropped a couple drops and like branches grew out of the wood planks. Like, would something have grown out of his corpse? Like, I mean, later on they don't have a swamp and they turn into those different things.
It'd be like that really confusing end scene in the fountain when he just like all the branches come out of his mouth.
I was thinking about like I know later issues of Swamp Thing they talk about like he can manipulate the microorganisms inside your body, because there are flora inside all of us, and he can manipulate those. And so imagine it would just create, manipulate those. So he would have like branched out, from those organisms, I guess. But
because the other people that take that chemical go a different route.
That's true, but it is all about the essence,
Right. Because they went more animal than plant. Because I know this is like a plant-animal sort of hybrid.
Well, that was something that was a Wes Craven idea through and through. Like he really wanted to get the idea that like whatever you are at your core, that's what this thing accelerates.
Which they, kind of, I don't know where this originated, but they definitely used that in the Captain America movie.
Yeah.
It's going to make you more of what you already are. So it makes Red Skull just a, monster and
raging asshat.
Yeah. So, only other point in Act 1 that I want to hit is just how much of a beast Cable is. Like, just in the first act, she gets, she comes out, she's looking for, who is it, Charlie, I think, and Ferret comes up behind her, and she instantly, backhands him, punches him in the gut, and then, or no, this is in the shed. She nails him with that tank. And then she gets away from him. Then Bruno comes up, and that's the one that, she gets on the ground, hits him a couple times, and then runs to get the gun, and then turns around and fires, blows the one dude away.
Right.
She is instantly ready for action, and I don't know if it's just Adrienne Barbeau just playing it, it's believable. I believe that she's fully capable, and I guess she's an agent, so I guess that means that she has training of some kind.
At the time, wasn't Adrienne Barbeau? She was married to another
John Carpenter.
Yeah, I was gonna say she's married to another horror legend.
Yeah.
I thought it was John Carpenter, who he's a lot of times has strong female characters in his films, and I wonder if that just kind of rubbed off on her and the idea of making this tough woman, because she really is. As much as you want to say, I mean, the movie's called Swamp Thing, so it is about him. But essentially, Alice Cable is the star of that movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
he's moping in the swamp for a while before he comes back out.
Yeah,
and then I was a little thrown off by the whole actiony part of her, because the way she enters in high heels and fish out of water kind of feel to her.
Right.
And but then in that point, I sort of got a Ripley kind of feel from Aliens.
She definitely has Ripley hair in that.
That's part of it.
Just perfect.
Aside from the negligee fight sequence later on, where she's sort of
what? We can talk about that when we get there. But why is she in a 90 for the last half of the movie? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
I guess she was known for kind of doing those more nudie type films, so I think that's part of it.
I think she had done Creepshow at this point. For John Carpenter. I know I knew her before this from playing Catwoman and the voice of Catwoman in the animated series. So
that's right.
Yeah.
So much of the Batman animated series stems from these 80s superhero films.
Yeah.
So that too.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
So he's jumped in and nobody's seen him other than the weird explosions going on underwater.
Yeah.
A lot of the notes I have is from the end, really.
Okay.
So Act 2, I mean, there's the whole thing with they introduced Jude, who is just this, and he's not a very good actor, but I guess it was because they wanted to use a local because the laws with the SAG and all that stuff with young actors was really strict back then, and so if we work with local, then it'll be fine.
Yeah. But
I don't know that I don't know if there's any credentials to what his acting skills were before this, but his line delivery and all of it is just real bad.
Here comes trouble. You gonna plane crash?
Is there a gun here?
What kind of place you think this is? Of course there is. What happened to that thing?
It hit a tree.
Must be one of those hit and run kind of trees. Oh shit. There goes the neighborhood.
I love Jude in this because he feels incredibly real. I feel like if I drove down to South Carolina and I stop at that gas station, he's going to be sitting there, and just every line is uh-oh, here comes trouble.
Well, but his lines don't make sense, though, because he has that line.
That's true.
He has that line, when Swamp Thing saves him, he sees Swamp Thing and he's like, there goes the neighborhood. And you're just what?
Yeah.
Hey, he just got killed almost.
Yeah.
Give him some slack. He's out of it.
Which goes more to the point of these weekend warrior guys. They almost murder a child for basically no reason.
Yeah. Witness,
Yeah.
Kill all witnesses.
And what's the great part about that is he had the book on him.
Right.
They I don't. Did they kill him or did they just knock him upside the head?
He had a head injury.
They left him for dead.
His hand was in there waiting for alligators.
For all they know, he is dead.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if Swamp Thing revived him from the dead or just healed him.
It is hard to tell because the timing of Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
It could be both times that he heals someone. It's he could be healing them from a wound, or he may be raising them from the dead, depending on how long and how hard that wound had taken hold.
Yeah, I love Jude though.
Yeah.
I looked at his IMDb. This is his only acting credit. Nothing before this, nothing after this. His name's Reggie Batts.
Yeah, Reggie Batts. Him and Adrienne Barbeau still keep in contact. They're friends.
Yeah,
I guess he's probably a cool dude.
Well, and I looked him up. I just looked up the name in Google, and I found all kinds of stuff from Reggie Batts, like motivational speaker, and it's another black guy, but it's not the same guy.
Not the same Reggie Batts.
It's not. And I thought, oh, wow, this is, that's great that he went on and had a career as like a motivational speaker. But no, once I looked at like both adult Reggie Batts, it's definitely not the same person.
Yeah, that's unfortunate that he just didn't really do much.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the character's fun, and like you said, he's very real. But his lines, and that's not his fault. That's all Wes Craven on that one there. But his lines are pretty poor.
Patrick's giving up.
How dare you, sir?
I love the kid.
He's like, I really am waiting for that Jude spinoff film.
Yeah.
I literally wrote, I like the gas station clerk. And then, best quote of the movie, it's one of them hit and run kind of trees.
Yeah. She comes up, were you in a plane crash?
The dude's priceless.
Yeah.
How dare you?
He just speaks his mind.
He's the comic relief of this movie.
Oh, yeah.
He is, but
he's so straight with his delivery and it's deadpan because he probably does suck at acting.
Yeah.
But I think that makes it even better.
I agree.
If you love Jude in this film, just wait for the return of Swamp Thing. There are some like sidekick comic relief characters in it that are magnificent. They're on par, if not better, than Jude is in this film.
Nice.
Blasphemy. And that's all I was going to talk about in the second.
Okay.
That was act of Jude.
I definitely want to talk about Arcane. I really dig the way that Louis Jourdan plays him. He's very unsettling, and I thought he was a lot like a Hannibal Lecter almost. Got a real you can tell he's the smartest guy in the room. He's definitely, obviously in this movie, he's smarter than anybody that he's dealing with on a normal basis. I thought it was weird that he surrounds himself by, from what we see, very attractive women. And then I started to get a Charles Manson vibe. Like, are these followers like cult?
Yeah.
And then later on with the dinner scene, it's like, is this just a evil society that he's friends with, or are these like his followers? So I just,
And he's great in that movie, and his monologues are like chill.
Every
one
line
of them is
he
like,
has, yeah.
What's crazy is so right before this movie, his son purposefully OD'd and committed suicide. Like it said, the thing I was reading said May 12th of 1981.
Okay.
And the movie started shooting, I want to say like May 31st.
Yeah, I read that it was like during film.
It was very quick,
okay.
and like that already set the tone for like how the movie was going to be for everyone. Because I guess on set, like everything was very just kind of like somber and weird for the first couple of weeks because I mean he was dealing with that, and he was like, no, I want to keep doing this, and he's like easily the biggest name in this movie.
Yeah.
Like at this time, he's like almost an A-list celebrity.
Yeah,
and he was just in a dark time in his life, and like I guess it really like
that shows
and it kind of hit everyone a little hard that was involved in the project, and so that's part of it too, of like why sometimes some of the scenes just seem so almost brooding.
Yeah,
I mean it is. He's really taken from his real life.
I mean it's sad, but it's if that's your motivation,
right.
That's powerful,
Yeah, and I believe he's in the sequel too.
That's
so
what
he
I read,
like enjoyed it enough, and like felt like he got enough out of it.
He plays a good villain. He's going to be in our next Bond movie. He's in Octopussy.
Yeah.
So we'll see him again. I don't think I've ever seen him in anything else. So
he's mostly in I want to say like French films, but he was like a big time European actor, and so when Wes Craven like locked him in for this movie, they're like, "Whoa, that's huge."
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
I really don't have much else from 2 other than when he loses his arm.
Yeah.
One of the best lines, and it actually like it kind of brings out the human side of Swamp Thing and really breaks the ice between the 2 characters.
Okay.
So he's been blasted with like these guys shooting him and just filling him with bullets and grenades, and then Ferret chops his arm off, and he's sitting there and he's kind of breathing heavy, and Alice walks up to him and she says, "Does it hurt?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Only when I laugh."
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's so charming.
It's
coming
out of
from
nowhere,
a monster.
Yeah.
And you're like, and then they kind of both laugh together, and you're like, that's a really good line.
I really like the scene. It's Dick Durock who's playing, the physical, obviously the entire performance. And he does a good job of the sad Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
Like, they give him a few moments. One at the burnt out lab, and then the moment here with I almost called her Abby, Alice and Swamp Thing. Like, it's not a movie that you expect to have like let a scene breathe. So.
Well, they had filmed. I guess they filmed a lot of the Swamp Thing stuff with both Weiss in the costume and Dick Durock, and they ended up just sticking with Dick Durock, who he died in, I want to say like 93 or 94. But before that, he basically played Swamp Thing in everything. So he does this movie, he does Return to Swamp Thing, and then he comes back for the TV show that ran from 90 to 93, and then he like dies shortly after the show is canceled. Almost like my work is finished. Really weird that he just like essentially played Swamp Thing his entire career.
Yeah. I read that he did, had like a role in a 2-part Incredible Hulk episode.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, a lot of the action in this movie, like in this second act, it's just an episode of The Incredible Hulk.
Right.
All he does is just throw people, and that's pretty much, if you watch an episode of the Hulk, he's just whipping dock workers around, left and right, and that's pretty much what.
When he kills Ferret, you're thinking you're like, oh, this is gonna be, because it's Wes Craven, and when you first watch it, you're like, he's gonna like rip his head off or something. Like, this is gonna be disgusting. And instead, he just like grabs his head until like he kind of starts to bleed from his mouth, and then he just like drops it. Yeah. And you're like, okay,
pretty awesome.
Sure.
It was kind of anticlimactic for that big face-off between those two. Like, I thought it would have been more brutal. Like he was saying, like arms, arm for an arm kind of thing.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that would have been cool.
Or like,
off his arm.
or just like grow a tree branch throughout his entire body or something like that. But instead, like I said, there's not a whole lot of the plant powers in this movie. Way more just like brute strength for whatever reason.
He's the Hulk.
I literally wrote down where the hell are the superpowers, and then right after that he heals Jude with his magic touch. Nice. I was like, wasn't expecting that power.
Yeah.
I thought there was gonna be like vines getting people and like even like alligators joining in because he's like part Aquaman.
Right. Yeah. I definitely would have preferred if there were more,
it was just like
plant,
you said, he was
more
just
of being able
people.
to control the plants around him. That would have been nice.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Like vines or something. I don't know. It was just weird that all he did, like you said, was throw people.
Yeah.
It's like the same shot. Trampoline.
Basically, yeah. Let's see.
So I don't know if this is Act 2 or Act 3.
Yeah.
Because we kind of, like I said, it's awkward. But this is an awkward scene.
Oh, okay.
So Swamp Thing watches Alice bathe in like this really strange, creepy scene. There's so much to talk about in this bizarre scene.
Let's get into it.
First of all, why are you bathing in a swamp?
Right.
Like what prompts you
I
to
just think
bathe in a swamp?
Stand By Me with the leeches. Like,
right. Like that's my first thought is like, what in there is trying to feed off of you at that time? That's disgusting.
Yeah.
And swamp water is not clean. Like you're not getting clean. You're probably making yourself dirtier.
Fetid, bracken,
it's like sludgy feeling.
Yeah.
When you're in a swamp, it's like heavy. And so I'm like, why is it? She's just like, she's like really enjoying herself in it. And I'm like, I don't understand.
And they shoot it really well. Like it's one of the, probably doesn't fit the movie, but it's one of the best shot scenes as far as like artistically,
Yeah. In the European version, it's way more extended and like way more like boob shots. You know?
I couldn't tell which version I had for this,
The American version has like a side boob shot, and then the like there's way more focus on her. Okay. And I guess part of her contract was like, because by this point she had kids and stuff, and she was kind of done with that part of her career. Yeah. And so at this point, it's like part of the contract deal is the European release, it can stay, but basically anytime it's released in America, it's out. But the first DVD release, like when DVDs started coming out, they accidentally printed the wrong version, and I guess she like tried to sue MGM and stuff over contract negotiations and stuff. And it really like now those DVDs go for more money because they're like
They've been version.
they've been pulled and banned and everything else and whatever. But
and they did a recall, though.
But it's just such a ridiculous thing because it literally is like a 5-second scene.
Okay.
And I understand not wanting to like have that or whatever, but the movie's like 30 years old.
Yeah.
So like at this point,
celebrate it. It's like, yeah, that was me, when in my 20s or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I had a rocking body back then.
She was in her 30s.
Was she?
Yeah, but that scene it really doesn't make a lot of sense because it just seems so awkward.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I think it was like to more, again, try to like more humanize him, but it doesn't. It instead just makes him seem like a creeper.
Yeah.
And then the part when he pulls the like the book over his face to like cover his eyes when it's like that's so silly and like just childish.
Because the nude scene kind of works by itself. It's out of place, but it's whatever. But then when they pan from her and you realize he's been standing there the whole time, that's real weird.
Yeah.
So
I'm on Swamp Thing's side.
That
is their love scene. She's bathing in the swamp, which is him.
I wish they would have done the.
That's an artistic, very valid point.
Okay,
I never really thought of it that way.
Yeah,
and in the comics, in the Alan Moore story, he essentially his intimacy with Abigail Arcane is that he has these tubers that grow on him. They're basically like sweet potatoes, and I was like. The joke I call them sex fruit because essentially that's what it is.
Yeah.
So when people eat this fruit, it like gives them a euphoria, and it like gives him and that person like a bond, like an intimate bond. No spoilers.
It's a great
but
issue.
Return to Swamp Thing really tries to embrace that concept. So you think this is a good like love scene of her bathing in the swamp and that being symbolic of her being with him. Oh no! You're in for a treat.
Okay,
some
that's Heather Locklear is in the sequel.
Heather Locklear is in the sequel. I love that the cover of this movie too is like him carrying Adrienne Barbeau, and she's like screaming.
Yeah,
and it's really a beautiful cover.
Yeah,
and then they try to recreate that with Return to Swamp Thing, and Heather Locklear is like laughing and being all playful, and it really doesn't do the job. But that basically, in a nutshell, sums up that sequel.
Okay.
Because it's just, it embraces the goofy side of the Wes Craven film, and it's just like, let's roll with it.
Okay. Well, we won't get into that too much. Right. You're definitely coming back for that episode. So
that's a fun one.
I think that's the end of... Well, right after that, they get captured again. So
right, and that's why it's so confusing to tell where like Act 2 and Act 3, there's that because that awkward scene, the bathing scene doesn't really fit in either act.
Yeah, because it definitely felt like the start of a new act.
Right. But then Act 3 is insane comparatively. Like it just gets crazy.
Well, let's get into it.
Yeah, I want to start by saying I'm very confused.
Okay.
At the beginning of the capture.
Okay.
I don't know if it was something characters were saying, but did Swamp Thing want to be caught to get fixed?
Well,
or
she
reverse
said,
something?
You meant for this to happen, didn't you? And he says that the only way out is through. I think that's his way of saying the only way for you, Alice, to get away is
through a guy that wants to kill you.
I guess somehow to get out, because he knows they're going to take them out of the swamp. And maybe then she has a better chance of actually getting away. I don't know.
I thought he was thinking that a smart arcane guy could fix him.
I don't know.
I didn't know what he was like. Why he would want to be caught, other than to fix his situation.
took it as he wanted to get Abby as far away from the actual physical swamp, and that would be best by.
It is that line is kind of confusing, and then and I'll talk about it later. There's a line at the end that kind of wraps it all up. It kind of ties that together, I guess, maybe, but it's still, that line doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So yeah, let's just jump into the Act 3. I don't even know where to start.
It's like a totally different movie.
It really is.
It turns into like, Well, let me gather my thoughts.
That dinner scene kind of reminds me of Todd Browning's Freaks. Have you ever seen that movie?
No.
It's basically about these circus freaks that want to make people like them. And there's this dinner scene in that movie that is very similar to this.
Yeah.
And it makes you uncomfortable. You're like, I would not want to be at that dinner party.
Yeah. See, I got the impression that this is a secret society type. Yeah. These are other like-minded, wealthy people that have, like, what was that movie? The Purge.
Yeah.
The second one, maybe? Where they show, all these wealthy people come to this enclosed, warehouse where they could then hunt people.
Yeah.
So it's like these are people with money, because Alice is sitting at the table all tied up, so they must be okay with this.
Yeah.
It's not phasing anybody.
Yeah,
so it makes me think these are other, people from Arcane's, circle of friends or whatever that. And again, I don't know if they're followers of him, like a cult type thing.
It almost does feel cultish.
Yeah. Because he's at the head of the table, and
yeah.
everyone's listening to him. And,
right. And throughout this entire movie, it's never real clear what he wants. His motivations are never out and out stated, I don't think. I know in the book it's more...
Other than it seems he wants the formula.
Yeah, but what,
Yeah.
He doesn't know it's
He does have that really good monologue about, like, it's right after the dinner scene.
Yeah.
When the girls bring him the drink, and he says something, I can't remember the exact line, but he basically says, like, it's a beautiful world and I want to control it. Yeah. Essentially is what he said. And
not to be the phenomenon, but the thing in itself. Eternal. Absolute beauty. Absolute strength and power. Physical and spiritual. To be the world and own it.
Yes?
Darling, tell Karen to bring me a glass of brandy.
I think that's kind of, it's like a classic villain, just like world domination. That's his end game.
Yeah, and I think in the book he wants immortality.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I did not get that from this one.
Right.
He wanted to control, like, maybe food supply or something, because
these
plants can grow
true.
wherever.
Yeah.
So I thought it was more along those lines.
And I could have seen it if they had said, because of this formula, it's going to create an end to world hunger, because they can grow crops literally anywhere. So, maybe he would then control the supply line of make money. But, they don't say that, so it's...
Yeah, I didn't get the whole, like, immortal weird plan
really
that he had later.
Here,
He had it after he figured out Swamp Thing was.
Sure. He saw the creature and wanted that power for himself.
Right.
So,
the back and forth between Arcane's transformation and Swamp Thing's arm growing back, that, to me, is the, like, most perfectly edited and filmed scene. It just, the parallels, and the transformations are very similar to, like... have you guys ever seen the movie American Werewolf in London?
I was thinking that.
It's like one of my favorite horror films.
Okay.
And it has that feel of like, exactly. So it has that feel of just like when he's transforming into that creature, like his limbs are growing and the like joints are like cracking and things like that. And it feels a lot like that. And then when Swamp Thing's hand is growing in the sun, it like kind of parallels that. And it's like, who's going to get there first kind of feel.
Okay. And because they show his like clawed hand ripping through this husk that he grows.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it shows the little tiny plant
like
arm,
baby hand.
Like a baby hand.
It's like the scene from Deadpool.
Yes. I kept waiting for him to say it's going to feel huge.
Yeah. So I really love
I do like
scene.
that
that's probably my favorite scene in the movie. And,
okay.
But then it's spoiled by that little, like, the short creature, and he's like, I could get you out.
I thought of him as, like, one of Arcane's unmen.
Yeah.
Like, so it's kind of cool that they slip him in the books. He's got, like, Arcane surrounds himself with these little mutated monsters, kind of, like, he calls them unmen.
One is this character named Cranius, and he's, like, a head that has a hand, like, as its, like, feet. He's basically like a head spider. And then there's this, like, really weird purple snake named Ophidian who's, like, he's, like whispers things to all the other ones and, like, controls them and stuff. So the Unmen are really awesome.
Yeah.
And that's something I feel like this movie could have, like, if he would have tried to adapt those a little better, I think the movie would have felt a little more eerie and weird instead of, like, so much sci-fi.
That was one of my thing I wrote down for later, but I'll go ahead and talk about it now, that I think because the second act of this movie, all the fights are just, Alice runs away, Swamp Thing shows up, fights, throws some guys around, and then that's just repeated kind of like 2 or 3 times.
Right.
I think it would have been better had you shown Arcane experimenting with the notes that he has, and creating these unmen, sending them out into the swamp to fight Swamp Thing, building up until he finally gets the last notebook, and completing the perfect, the formula. So,
I would agree with that.
So, I mean, that scene is great, but when it's all said and done, it's kind of disappointing because
Wolf kind of.
So they escape, and this is my last point from Act 3, but I'll just go ahead and go with this since we're already talking about it. But that scene leads right into this scene where he's like, the only way to escape is underwater, and it leads out to the swamp. And you're like, okay, cool, this is going to be awesome. And then the next scene, they're just like up in the swamp and everything's fine. Apparently, there was like this huge epic underwater chase scene and battle that they had planned. And like the storyboards all have it. And like it was supposed to be this like really epic, visually astounding scene. And the budget cuts, they're like, nope, can't do it. It's so unfortunate because like they were supposed to like go under and then go through all these like tubes and tunnels underwater and wrestle underwater, and it's supposed to be this like just really incredible scene, and instead it's just like you need to go through this really tricky way to the swamp and then just like fade to black and then opens to Swamp Thing coming out of the swamp. Okay.
I was kind of disappointed that he didn't talk after that. Like he was just a monster. He didn't have. Like, did something go horribly wrong that he lost his mind? Like, because he was supposed to be strong in mind, spirit, whatever. But he only got a crazy mutation. He didn't get the...
And he kind of looks like the disguises from the village that they use to keep the people in the village. Like
I dig the... like, his body is like armor plating, kind of like an armadillo almost. Like, I dig that. And he was, wielding a sword, which is pretty badass.
He looks like a Power Ranger villain.
Yes.
I figured that he doesn't talk because, it took a while for Swamp Thing to talk. You know? So maybe it was like he hadn't gotten there yet.
Okay. I just figured Swamp Thing didn't say anything because he didn't have anybody to talk to.
Which is unfortunate because the book has so many good, like, monologues from Swamp Thing. I would read his voice and imagine, like, was Keith David or David Keith? The guy that voiced Goliath in the Gargoyles cartoon.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
for sure.
That's the voice that I've always heard. So it's unfortunate that you don't get these, beautiful, like, of course, Alan Moore hadn't written, those yet. So
in the stuff that they're adapting, by this point, like the Lin Wein stuff, Swamp Thing doesn't really talk. It's a lot of internal monologue, but he hasn't figured out how to speak yet.
Okay, so I guess it's true.
So they were trying to get that point across without having the movie have no talking in it at all. But it is weird because when he does say stuff, it's not like what you would expect him to say.
Yeah, I guess I've most of my Swamp Thing, experience comes from the Alan Moore run and forward.
Right.
So
and it's just half the fun of a villain battle is the banter.
Yeah.
And they had a little bit of that, down in the dungeon or whatever.
Right.
They're talking about essence, like we mentioned earlier, that it just magnifies what's already there.
Yeah.
But it was kind of weird that he was basically just fighting a wild beast.
Yeah, and it just comes down to bashes him a few times and then
Hulk smash.
Gets the sword from him and eventually sticks him with it. So
you should really try to track down some of that first Swamp Thing stuff.
Okay,
the first run, it got canceled pretty early on. I think it's like 19 or 20 issues.
Yeah,
and Lin Wein's issues are just like there's a formula to the style the way he writes it. It's basically. Swamp Thing's internal monologue of, I wish I was a man again, and I wish I could communicate with my friend that I'm not the one that killed Alec Holland. I am Alec Holland. Okay. And then Matthew Cable's like, curse you, Swamp Thing, I'm going to get you. Yeah. And then they chase each other, and then, Swamp Thing ends up in this weird situation where he has to fight a monster, or he has to, stop someone from destroying a village or something, and then he does something heroic, and then gets on a train or a plane, and then inevitably gets pushed off of that thing for the next issue. Yeah. So, the vessel of Swamp Thing traveling for this 20-issue run is just, he gets on a vehicle of some sort, and then something causes him to get thrown off of that vehicle.
And then his next adventure starts in whatever town.
Right, in whatever town he rolls into. He's like a tumbleweed.
So it's a road trip. It's like Quantum Leap.
It's like Quantum Leap and a road trip that
I picture. I mean, again, it sounds like the Incredible Hulk TV show.
It is.
You know,
it really is, and it's so weird because Len Wein had written the Hulk a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Is there sad Swamp Thing music?
You can imagine it in your head for sure.
The music from this movie is almost identical to Mad Max.
Yeah,
the music is incredible in this film. I think for the tone of the movie, I think it fits perfectly.
Some of those more emotional scenes definitely have decent music, but
I think I only noticed the parts that annoyed me.
Okay,
that's my problem.
Yeah,
with
fair.
With like the sharp notes and
right.
Ting, ting. But
I mean, my notes as far as like the acts are, I feel pretty good about hitting everything that I wanted to hit.
One beef with Swamp Thing's final battle.
Okay.
Couldn't tell if I just turned my head away, but it looked almost like he went back towards Cable. Don't think he used her as a shield necessarily.
He does.
Does he?
He does.
That's what it looked like to me, but
he's definitely not shielding her.
Yeah.
Because that's how she gets stabbed.
Right. I don't think it's his intent to use her as a shield, but he definitely is kind of like stumbling back.
Yeah.
And she kind of jumps in front of him, and he doesn't really stop her from doing that.
It may be more she steps up.
Right.
But it does unveil a new superpower. He heals her and cleans her dress at the same time.
Yeah, I noticed that.
But there's like moss on her when she's healed.
Yeah.
It's like that didn't happen when he healed Jude.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, is she gonna have like swamp boobs? Like, what's going on here? But yeah, that seemed like an odd. I couldn't tell if that was what really happened. I was like, that doesn't make sense. Why would he do?
Either he kind of unintentionally pushed her in his direction, or she probably stepped
It's just
up.
like, I'll heal her later.
Yeah.
Let's not discount the fact that this entire third act, she's wearing a nightie.
Yeah.
What happened?
She probably just tripped over it. And,
right.
Fell into the sword.
Yeah, I didn't quite. I mean, I guess that was a evening gown for the dinner party.
Yeah.
That suspiciously looked like underwear, but
so Anton Arcane is he may be a mastermind of science. He may be a really good, charismatic leader of a cult, apparently, but he is not good with fashion. Clearly,
right?
He doesn't quite get it.
Well, I mean, look how his henchmen dress.
Yeah, all camo all the time.
Bruno, whose turtleneck shrinks with him, and pants.
Well, I mean, that's again Incredible Hulk. He should bust through completely, not just.
You think it would go the other direction? I'm glad.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be funny if like this little wrinkly, nasty, naked, monster had jumped up onto the table. Like.
He basically turned into a leprechaun to me.
Yeah.
He's like,
yeah.
And then he gets real weird and he says stupid stuff like,
have a nice trip.
See you next fall.
Part.
Yeah. Oh, that's awful.
That's
that
what
part,
made me think of the leprechaun.
That part is the worst.
Yeah, the third act is a little strange. But
it gets Funhouse on us real quick.
We got anything else for Act 3?
I think that's it for the acts for me, at least.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump into our most heroic, most villainous.
I think Swamp Thing's most heroic moment is that final kill that we were just talking about. Okay. Because he just grabs that sword from him after he sees him stab Alice. I keep wanting to say Abby. We're both struggling with that because she shouldn't be called Alice. Whatever.
Right.
So after Alice is stabbed, he grabs the sword from him and just starts wailing on him with the sword. And then at the end, just lifts it up over his head and stabs him.
Yeah.
But then he turns to Abby, heals her, or Alice heals her, and then he's like, "It's over."
Right.
And that's where I think that line comes in of the only way out is through. And then he's basically saying it's all done because we've made it through this horrific.
Maybe it's let this run its course and we'll eventually come out on top. Maybe.
It's a ballsy call being chained up in a dungeon.
Right. With only one arm at that point.
Yeah,
but I do love that he just he stabs him and he's like, it's over.
Yeah.
That just seems really. He seems like a hero at that point.
It's
not so much like a.
What is it? There Will Be Blood, where he's bashes. What's his name? I forget the guy's name that he kills. But when he does kill him, he's it's done. Or something like that. Or I'm done. I'm finished. Or something
I'm finished. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there are a lot of heroic moments in this movie when you think about it. Like Linda, she creates a distraction, tries to run out of the lab with the notebooks.
Yeah.
Gets killed for it. Jude, saves, not like he's not sacrificing himself, but he saves Alice a few times.
Yeah.
Alice is a badass. Like, she,
right. She almost doesn't need saving for most of the movie. And the one time that she does, it's because she essentially sacrifices herself for Swamp Thing.
Yeah. I mean, and in that second act, there are a number of times where she gets grabbed by these same guys that in the first act she was able to, hand-to-hand combat. So it is kind of weird that
she's tired.
In the second act, she becomes, I guess, the damsel.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
That's just the story taking its horrible turn.
So I think, for me, Alice is more heroic, has more hero moments, because essentially all Swamp Thing's doing through most of the movie is throwing dudes. The third act, the fight, is definitely a great hero moment for Swamp Thing, but I got to give it to Alice.
We'll go outside the box. Go with Bruno.
Okay.
With getting them out of the dungeon with the weird candlestick turning action.
Yeah. Tripping Arcane.
Arcane. I mean, without him, they'd be stuck in the dungeon.
He was pretty sympathetic, leading up to it.
I always felt bad for him because I could tell he was the dumb henchman, and apparently really liked Barrett because he seemed the only one distraught over Barrett's demise. Like, we're going home. What? And I could see him he was betrayed by Arcane, and he's like, all right, screw this. I'm on the Swamp Thing side.
Yeah,
and it was kind of
just been changed into a monster. Yeah.
Even though Arcane was going the same route, but
okay.
But I mean, without him, there's pretty much no glorious sword battle.
That's true.
And everything you guys have said is the main heroic points probably in this whole movie. Yeah. I mean, other than that, it's probably Cable hiding the notebook smartly, hiding because she knows she's probably going to get caught with all those people all around. It was a smart move on her part, but
Okay. Warner, what do you got for villainous? Most villainous.
So that monologue I mentioned where he's talking about how he's going to control the world is really villainous, I think. But as far as physical acts of villainy, it's going to be a tie between when Arcane just maliciously stabs Alice. In that moment, I think she jumps in front thinking, oh, he's not going to harm me. And he just stabs right through it, no remorse. It's between that and the guys in the boat just attempting to murder a child. That's pretty villainous for guys who we've established are probably not really bad guys because they're not good at being bad. They're just kind of dopey. Yeah. But then they try to kill this kid because he's a witness to whatever they were doing.
They didn't get anything from him.
Right,
they just get the drop on Alice.
Yeah, that's pretty villainous in my opinion.
Right. I mean, Arcane is dripping in villainy throughout this entire, those monologues are good. But for me, just shooting Linda, shooting her in the back, because really, where's she going to go? It's not like she's probably going to get through all the guys that are undoubtedly outside that room,
Well, it does know there's a crafty gas station clerk out there.
That's true, so shooting her is probably
It's an odd choice.
It's an unnecessary kill just to mess with Alec, really.
Yeah.
Because he's taunting her with the gun before that, so.
Yeah. There was, again, with Arcane, he had a moment where he was talking about the difference between, genius and, it was when he was talking about, essentially, with his groupie girl. He's like, he was smart, but I'm a genius, and genius is basically got the power to do. Rather than just he had it was another one of those monologues that just go on, and it made me think that he's kind of like a Lex Luthor kind of guy, where he's just these peons around me, and he's kind of like Lex Luthor. He surrounds himself with idiots.
Yeah.
Or at least from the movie that we've recently seen, the 1 and 2 of Superman, the motion picture or whatever. And I don't know why that is. Why they surround themselves with imbeciles.
I'm sure there's some kind of symbolically some kind of like ego reason why they do it because they feel superior,
right?
And that just, even though they're already smart, that makes them feel even more smart, I guess. But it is
irritating.
It is well, it is. It seems like also that it is not very productive.
Yeah, I figure you got. It might decrease the amount of people who are going to challenge your authority or try to, it's like Transformers. Starscream is always trying to overthrow the main Transformer bad guy. Megatron. Yeah,
okay.
It's like, so when you have another bad guy that's almost, at that level or has that much ambition.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but he's going like way lower.
But again, I think it's like these are cult groupie followers. I really... I've convinced myself that he's surrounding himself with a cult.
That dinner scene is where it really feels that way.
Yeah,
but the most
just the way the women are like the first one, he's just having a conversation with. She's just, oh, sir, you're a genius, and it's very like brainwash type,
right?
Yeah. But I mean, the most villainous thing is the stereotypical just not caring about his own people and turning Bruno into
sacrificing Bruno.
That leprechaun chihuahua thing, whatever it was.
Yeah. Okay. We don't always hit like what holds up or doesn't hold up, but I think
you have to give this one some wiggle room.
Yeah.
There are some things that definitely do. See, where we're going to disagree is I think the score really holds up, and I think it's just the tone of the movie really fits that score. We've said this 1,000 times today, but Arcane's monologues, still chilling. Yeah, and then and then the Swamp Thing suit itself is actually pretty great.
It's not bad,
and the transformations. So like the effects of the transformations and the makeup for Swamp Thing, I feel like are like top notch, which kind of makes some of the other stuff not look so good.
I thought about that, the makeup and the effects, and it's like we've already talked about, Planet of the Apes, and those suits, except for some of the gorillas, but
the main suits,
makeup effects are really, really strong. I think I would have liked a stronger, I guess a sculpted head for Swamp Thing, that iconic like brow that he has, like that's kind of missing in this, and it's just he's very smooth,
He is. He is. They fixed that in the sequel a little bit. He gets a little more like messy, and he gets the like nose branch thing and all that. But what I think is really impressive with the makeup of this is Swamp Thing's mouth. The way it moves when he speaks is very natural. It doesn't ever, sometimes, especially Planet of the Apes,
the bunching.
You get the bunching or like the mouth movements aren't natural feeling. I don't know how they blended the makeup and the mask, but it did it in such a way that it seems like it's his own mouth moving. So I don't know really how they did that, but I think that's really incredible.
Yeah.
The only weirdness I had with it was like the first scene where we really get him close up and his eyes look like the makeup's not done all that well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I was like, wait, okay, I could see his real skin, I think. Yeah. But it was so fast I couldn't really I didn't pause it to double check, but it looked a little off like in the eye area.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I mean, I sort of just let it slide that he's basically walking around in a jumpsuit.
Yeah.
Because everything's sort of like straight on him. It's not like conformed to it.
Right. Yeah. For me, the locations, shooting locations really work, because they could have used that backlot pond that they used for, the Black Lagoon. And even with the few scenes that you get where they're in more of the marshes, where the airboats, they're zooming around, you can tell, like, they're not in the swamps. They're now in where they shot those, outside L.A. maybe, or somewhere, completely different locations. So the actual shooting locations are really strong. So
I think the biggest thing that didn't hold up was probably, like we've talked about, the trampoline fight throwing scenes.
Yeah, the action could have been, a lot better.
And I would say that the final monster suit.
Yeah.
It just seems real thrown together.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because Swamp Thing does look so good. It's almost like they didn't know what they wanted Arcane to become.
Yeah.
And then they're like, what do we have laying around? And then they just like threw it on it.
We've got a wolf's head and an armadillo suit. Put them together.
And also we have these tusks for whatever reason coming out of his face. It's like, okay, sure.
I thought he was going to be a snake at first. Because he was shedding his skin, kind of.
Yeah.
So I thought he was going to be like... And then he was in a cocoon, so I was like, is he going to be a butterfly?
The cocoon thing is really cool,
I like the idea of the cocoon.
I liked his face that was sort of going away and being absorbed.
Yeah.
Like, that was a really good effect to me. Like,
but then he comes out as wolf pig armadillo, and you're like, I'm not real into
where did
this.
this come from?
Yeah, so that's the main... And then, like, the dialogue stuff. Like the see you next fall joke, and I've already mentioned, but like there goes the neighborhood and that's kind of stuff. Like that stuff does it. It feels very like 80s cornball kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're all lines.
Yeah.
You can't tell this, but I'm brooding.
Well, they feel it, Patrick. Well, let's jump into some pros and cons, and then we'll get out of here.
The main pro for me is that this movie re-sparked like DC's interest in that character and relaunched the title, which then from that point becomes this incredible run and leads to a TV show and animated series and an action figure line that I actually still to this day own every single one of. So so whether you like the movie or you don't, it paved the way for Swamp Thing to become into like the mainstream culture, and I think that's really cool.
I think Swamp Thing's one of those characters that he shouldn't be mainstream, you know?
Right.
He needs to be kind of that, second tier level. That way there's some mystery and,
He's not an out in the open superhero.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But now this is two different universes, but is Groot based on Swamp Thing at all?
Groot he's a creation
similar to me, but
Groot is I don't know that he's based on Swamp Thing, but I do know that Man Thing is Marvel's version of Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
And Len Wein and help me out here, who created Man Thing?
Wolfman?
Marv. I think it was Marv Wolfman. Len Wein and Marv Wolfman at the time were roommates.
Okay.
And they were like big fans of like the Muck monster from Airboy.
Okay.
And like the old 40s and 50s comics. There's this guy called the
Heap, right?
The Heap. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Glad you're here, Travis.
Well, I knew where you were going.
The Heap,
with it.
and it's essentially the same story. Only an airplane crashes into chemicals in a swamp and creates the Heap in World War II. And so they were big fans of the Heap, and they both one worked for DC, one worked for Marvel, and they said, let's both create our own version of the Heap and see which one picks up. So a lot of times people are like, oh, well, Swamp Thing's just a ripoff of Man Thing, or Man Thing's a ripoff of Swamp Thing. And really, it's just two friends trying to create the same character. Both a ripoff of the Heap.
I read that that's why Marvel and DC never sued each other for, one of them ripping each other off, is because they both ripped off,
the Heap, right.
So.
Don't they both have so many characters that are the same?
Some Captain Marvel is in both Marvel and DC.
Was it Hawkeye and Bullseye?
Or Hawkeye and Green Arrow are very
Arrow.
similar.
Yeah.
Like, there's very similar.
You always have Flash, Quicksilver.
But then both of those, like Hawkeye and Green Arrow, are both Robin Hood ripoffs. So in theory, you really, again, it's like the Heap thing. It's like, do we really want to draw attention to the fact that we ripped this off?
Deadpool is a literal ripoff of Deathstroke.
Yeah.
Down to like
the
one
name.
Slade Wilson and Wade Wilson. So
he's basically just like
making
a spoof.
fun of. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah, Groot just popped in my head.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Similar
Jack
powers.
Kirby created Groot in the 60s.
Yeah, so he would have been pre-Swamp Thing or
Yeah.
Man Thing. Swamp Thing and Man Thing were both 71 or 72.
So Groot's more just plant, whereas...
Yeah, and he's an alien,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
So...
I guess technically he's an alien life form. Okay.
The interesting thing about Swamp Thing, though, is that Len Wein stuck with that character much longer than anyone else stuck with their versions of that character, I guess, because even when he was done writing the book, he was an editor at DC.
Yeah.
And I believe he was the head editor on Swamp Thing when Alan Moore was doing
his
it all
name's
the way
definitely
through. Yeah.
all over that book.
So, he really helped mold that character, even though his character is vastly different from what it is today. He helped mold that character along the way. So I think it's really kind of his like brainchild all the way through.
Yeah, and he goes on later to create Wolverine.
Yeah.
So he's got
run,
a couple notches on his belt. Let me see. I wanted to talk about. I kind of touched on it earlier. The some of the quieter moments that Swamp Thing gets. It's just you don't expect him in a movie like this, especially a movie that now you think of Wes Craven, but at the time, you wouldn't expect those types of scene from a horror director. But something that we talked about in our Indiana Jones episode that one of our guests, Anthony, brought up, that if you can shoot a scene like the map room in Indiana Jones where there's no dialogue, it's just visual storytelling, and you can tell what's going on. I'm definitely noticing that when we're watching movies since we did that episode. Yeah. And that moment really stuck out to me that, you could turn off there's no dialogue anyways, so it doesn't need it, I guess is what stuck out to me, that you can tell that he's this tragic character, that he's hurting, that he's even playing with, not playing, but he's messing with the lab equipment, and you could tell it's like he just doesn't know what he should do with it, almost. Like he knows that it's familiar, but he can't physically.
The shot when it's starting to get dark in the swamp and he's kind of off in the distance and he kind of just yells out. Yeah. That is so, it's such a powerful scene. Yeah. And it's literally just like a growl almost. Yeah. But it's so, it really cuts you deep and you're like, wow, this is a really tragic character.
Yeah.
So that was bummed for me, that wicked head of hair.
He did. Yeah. And clearly a womanizer, as he's like.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, at least the Toxic Avenger was a gross, pimply kid.
Right.
This guy was pretty...
a pervert, though. I mean, he was a creep.
Those movies are fun, too. I really do. Yeah. I like anything with a monster, gross monster character that's heroic, though.
I forget if Toxic Avenger is on our list. I think it is.
I think it is, yeah.
If it's not, it needs to be. Any other pros?
Well, so the producer on this movie was, he ended up going on to produce the Tim Burton Batman film.
All the Batman movies.
Yeah, so the, is it Michael
Uslan?
Yeah, Uslan, yeah. And he saw this, did it. It wasn't exactly what he wanted, but he was like, okay, I think we can do this. And he went forward with Batman. Yeah. And I think that this movie doesn't get enough credit for paving the way for superhero movies.
Yeah.
People don't realize that, realistically, other than Superman the movie, this is really the first superhero movie, and it's kind of odd to think that way, but it really kind of paved the way for that darker superhero.
Yeah, for sure.
I give Captain America all the credit for destroying the chance of a comic book movie.
Yeah.
Is that the one that has John Wesley Shipp in it?
No, that you're thinking of the Flash TV show.
What wasn't he? Didn't he play the Captain America in a made-for-TV movie too?
No. So far we did the first one, which was Reb Brown.
Oh yeah, Reb Brown.
Say that name.
I get him and John Wesley Shipp confused because there's very similar jaw lines.
Yeah. He played it twice, and then it's J.D. Salinger's son, Matt Salinger, plays him in the '90s. Yeah, Captain America.
Yeah.
I think we did blame him for that movie for why.
Well, we didn't do any more of the made-for-TV movies because we should have done the sequel to that one. Yeah. The Doctor Strange movie, I think, at that point. Yeah. And then some of the Hulk made-for-TV movie,
the crossover with Daredevil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because we had such a awful time with we just didn't want to do any more of those, specifically made
I'm thinking
for TV.
Of the 90s Captain America movie. Okay. Is the one is that the one where he... that one actually has Red Skull as the villain.
Yeah.
And okay, yeah.
But he's an Italian.
Right. No, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
We'll get there. That's still on our list, and I think we'll still do that one since it's definitely going to be from a different production,
Yeah.
One thing I can say for that movie is it's boring. It's that's the only reason it's hard to get through.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll see. I know Patrick's excited.
Totally.
Yeah. Let's hit some cons. I mean, we've talked about, probably some of them, but let's hit
let's face it, it failed. It flopped at the box office, really tanked. But I remember I have the special edition Blu-ray. That's how deep I am into Swamp Thing. And there's a interview with Adrienne Barbeau where she says that she remembers going to the premiere and being so disappointed because it wasn't the movie that she felt like she was making when it was happening.
Okay.
And she was like, man, this is such a bummer. And then they saw the numbers and stuff. But she remembers the crowd reaction actually being pretty decent.
Okay.
And she's like, and then after that, it became like people started asking her about it and like people were really into it. So the cult following is good, but the numbers don't show it. It did really poorly. Also, I think a big con is that it doesn't full, like we were talking about, like Alice Cable. It doesn't fully follow the story. And then the Unmen not being in it, that's a kind of a downer because it doesn't really follow the story very closely.
Was there a big following that would necessitate a movie? Like, is that part of the problem? Because it seems like a fringe character to begin with.
Oh no! At that time, especially the book had just been canceled, so there's no reason that they thought it was going to be a good movie. Like the book had been canceled because the character wasn't doing well with audiences, and so it's weird. Yeah, but then this movie that didn't do well financially ended up making that character actually matter again. So it is weird how you have this idea that failed in the comics, and for whatever reason, some producers like, let's make it into a movie.
Yeah.
It also fails, but then relaunches its original format. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a con and a pro.
Yeah. In some rights, yeah.
I already talked about one of mine. Just, I wish that second act they would have had more, like you said, have the Unmen, but show, Arcane messing with that formula.
Yeah.
Trying to create monsters or trying to create, a success, but failing and creating monsters. That would have been it's too much back and forth. Let's chase Alice. Swamp Thing breaks up. Steps in and throws some people, and then it's just kind of a merry-go-round. It just kind of comes back again. So just that second act is a little redundant.
Yeah, I assumed there was going to be a mega fight scene in the swamp.
Yeah.
I didn't think anyone would be able to catch him.
Right.
He just seemed unstoppable.
Yeah.
But even when they did catch Cable, they didn't hold on to her for very long.
Yeah.
And
they get her on the boat, and then she just knees Ferret and then jumps into the river.
Poor Ferret.
Yeah. It's like,
because that was
just do this.
It really didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
It was kind of a bummer of a third act. It was kind of sort of gimmicky, third act where it's just let's see what we can do with makeup or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what the point of it was, and it didn't seem to fit with the rest of the act. Now we're in this posh mansion all of a sudden, and
I think it's definitely hard with a character like Swamp Thing, is always going to be a tragic character. He's never going to reverse. I guess in current books he's kind of back to normal, but it's not like there's going to be a happy ending to the story.
Yeah.
It's meant to be a tragic tale,
right?
So it's kind of weird to have the end of the movie. It's just they killed the bad guy, but it still doesn't help. It's not like it gets revenge because his wife is still dead. He's still a monster,
And he never brings up the fact that he's avenging his sister at any point in that. I just realized.
Yeah. So
basically,
it's a weird ending.
Because he kind of wanted to get caught. I'm still confused about that. Then, was he trying to keep the? It didn't even seem like he was trying to keep the formula from him because he was telling him how to use the formula.
Yeah. It's going to bring out your essence.
He basically just, if he would have gotten away and the arcane monster didn't chase him, he would have just let him continue on his merry way.
Yeah.
Because the only reason he killed him is because he was trying to kill this girl, Cable.
Right.
Yeah. So, it was just a weird way to wrap up that movie, I thought.
Yeah. Okay, we ready for some ratings?
Yeah.
Or overall thoughts and ratings?
I have to really take myself out of it for this because as a Swamp Thing fan, it's hard to not just love the fact that there's even a Swamp Thing movie.
I kind of wondered about that with you because, I knew you were a Swamp Thing fan. You know, I didn't know you had a Len Wein and a Bernie Wrightson
tattoo,
signature.
signatures tattooed on
I didn't,
Swamp Thing's on there,
Wow.
But, no, I'm Charles Soule, who wrote Swamp Thing before he moved over to Marvel permanently, I interviewed him once for our podcast, and I remember him, when he retweeted the interview, he referred to me as an inimitable Swamp Thing fan because he's like, even I can't live up to the level of Swamp Thing fan is because he and I like had discussions about Swamp Thing before the interview and like is like a lot like the member berries on South Park right now. We were like, remember this part? And like, we were just like all really like both of us were just like gushing over Swamp Thing and like cool things that had happened throughout.
Nice. So you were Chris Farley.
Yeah. Remember that time
with the Beatles?
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, so like that's basically what that exchange was. So like, yeah, I'm definitely like way overboard to the point where like it's. But I have to take myself out of that for the rating because as much as I love Swamp Thing and I love the idea that there's a Swamp Thing movie, and I like want to rate it on the movie it could have been, but you can't do that because it could have been amazing had he had the budget that they promised him. So I'm gonna go ahead and give it like a 2.5 probably 2.5 out of 5. Is that where we're going? Like out of 5 rating?
Oh yeah, out of 5.
Yeah, 2.5.
Okay.
Wow, I thought it would have been higher.
No, I mean it's fun. It's a fun movie to watch. I've watched it a million times, but when you really break it down, it's not a great movie. Like we'll just like let's face it, it's not a cinematic masterpiece, but it is fun.
Yeah, and I take that into account usually. Like I'm not expecting the Swamp Thing to be a great film. Yeah, and it was made in a time where you were limited with effect budgets and effects themselves. Yeah. So I have to give it a little bit of slack. So, I mean, I didn't rate it that high either, but I gave it about a 2.
Okay.
Just because I got so disappointed with how it wrapped up. I was just like, I was expecting that one great battle sequence, and the sequence we got wasn't all that great. Okay.
I mean, like I said, it's a movie about a tragic character. It's not going to have a happy ending. It's, it doesn't even, he gets justice, but he doesn't get satisfaction, So.
Was he really him anymore? Because
depends on what version of Swamp Thing you kind of like in my head. Fair. No, he's not really Alec Holland.
At that point, no.
But only because I've read the Alan Moore stuff, and that's the...
Because that would explain why he doesn't care about his sister or anything else. So he's sort of him, but not really.
Well, the tragic part about it, he doesn't know that he's not Alec Holland. Yeah. He thinks he is Alec Holland. That's the real
so his whole world
part.
gets wrecked when he finds out.
Okay. He is literally just... but, like, when they cut him open, they find these, big piles of moss that resemble lungs. And, vegetable matter that resembles a brain, because... when, the essences were, like, creating him, they just thought, well, this is what a human body should be, so we'll give it a brain, we'll give it a heart, we'll give it lungs. Like, they didn't do anything. They were just, symbolic.
So a little setup to that story arc. The book was tanking again about issue, 18 or 19. Was not doing well. Alan Moore was just getting into writing comics. And DC was like, whatever, you can't make it any worse. And so they gave it to him, but his story arc doesn't start until 21. Yeah. But he actually ghost wrote issue 20. Yeah. And, people don't realize it. And he was finishing the script for the guy who was just like, I'm done, this book's failing, I don't care. And so the end of issue 20, he just straight up kills Swamp Thing off. It's like someone shoots him in the head, and that's the end. And you're like, what just happened? So 21, they're doing an autopsy and that's where all this stuff is revealed. And then it turns out he can't die because he's just a monster.
Yeah. I feel bad. I probably shouldn't have gone into as much detail as I did about that issue, but fuck, I just love it.
No. Yeah. I think
I think if you haven't read it,
still, even with just the stuff that we talked about, you could still read it and think it's an incredible story.
I just reread it the other day just to kind of prepare for this, but
it's awesome.
Yeah. But anyways, this movie, it's limited with what it can do. We talked about the budget, which was $2.5 to $3 million is what I found.
And wasn't it originally 3.5 million? But then they cut him to 2.5, halfway through shooting. Okay. It's not even I guess he was it wasn't hitting its schedule. Yeah. And so they're finish this movie and also we're cutting your funding. Yeah. And that's why a lot of that last stuff just gets real messy.
So that's why the armadillo monster's there.
Right.
We got to put an ending on it. So.
I assume they literally just dug through some prop until they found what.
I bet you flip through and you find a 60s, 70s horror movie, and you might see that costume.
Oh, yeah.
You know? But all that being said, I'm going to give it a 2.5. So we're all right there, you know, all total. That's still an average of 2.5. So
I think it's a good group watch kind of movie.
Probably. I don't know. I think it could have
think
some slow parts that would be a little boring.
Yeah, but it's
in a group setting. One-on-one,
I've done like viewing parties for both Swamp Thing and The Return of Swamp Thing. And definitely The Return of Swamp Thing is more of like a party film. Like when you're getting together, you can make some fun games out of like some of the stupid stuff that happens. But this one I remember watching with a group of friends, and like everyone was like, "Yeah, this is kind of a fun movie." Okay. But if you're okay with like talking through something, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, and the slow parts could let you talk about the movie while it's
Yeah.
just
I wonder if
there's a swamp.
Are there MST3Ks for either of these movies? I wonder, or riff tracks, or
I feel like they go older than. Yeah. I can't think of too many 80s.
That'd be awesome if there was. I bet there's a riff tracks. I would think that would probably be more likely.
But isn't Mystery Science coming back?
Yeah, so Netflix. Yeah,
maybe. Who knows? I just assume they always picked films they could easily get the rights to or something.
Right.
Yeah, that's a lot of it. Yeah.
So
and I will say the rights for the Wes Craven Swamp Thing were pretty muddy for a while. Like MGM had them, but then I don't know. There's a lot to that. And then the contract stuff with the actors and all. Yeah. It really made things kind of messy for a while. That's why it just now came out on Blu-ray. Like I don't know, like 2 years ago maybe.
Yeah.
So it could be a resurgence if they do something like that. Like
they've been talking about
or make fun of a film. It could bring it to another generation.
I'm still unclear where the status of Justice League Dark. I know that they're doing an animated version.
Okay, so let me see if I can pull that up. So it did. Me and the Nerd Management guys were just talking about this not too long ago. So it got picked up. It got greenlit secretly. Like no one even knew about this until like a week ago.
Okay.
And the director is the director of The Edge of Tomorrow, which I don't know if you guys saw that movie.
Doug Liman?
Yeah, that sounds right. Right. And that's a decent movie.
Yeah, I like it.
So I think it could be good. I think it could be really good. And he's working off of Del Toro's original script.
Oh, good.
So it's not going to be totally far off from what I knew. Okay. I knew when Del Toro was like, I'm going to make this movie. Yeah. Okay, sure. You've said that about like 20 different movies.
Yeah.
The Hobbit movies, and then he was talking about Pacific Rim 2.
Yeah.
And then he was like, no, first I'm going to make Justice League Dark. And then he bailed on that for Pacific Rim 2, which he has since bailed on again.
Well, and between that, what's that movie, Crimson Peak, he just did last year?
Yeah.
I think
but he had been talking about that for years, even at that point. So he always says he's going to do all
as long
this
as
stuff.
He's somehow involved in it, production.
Yeah. I think the movie will be great.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it. I love the idea of Swamp Thing being in it. And the most recent things I've read is that Swamp Thing is still a main character in this movie. So maybe here's hoping that we'll get to see it. And he is in the animated version as well. So that'll be fun.
Right on.
Cool.
Well, go ahead and let we'll give you some time to plug your show and all your social media and your band if you want.
Sure, yeah. So if you guys are looking to listen to more stuff just about comic books, we talk about comic books, TV, stuff like that, all in that same vein of like nerdy stuff. It's called Nerd Management. On Twitter, it's at NerdMGMT. Facebook, NerdMGMT. We've got a Snapchat that we hardly ever use. We've got
pictures of comic books.
Yeah. It's just a bunch of like stupid stuff from when we're recording. So, so all those formats. And then I play drums in the band Brother Oh Brother. You can find us on Facebook, also on Twitter at Bro Music, and cool. Well, that's pretty much all I do.
You're busy.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad, when I think I reached out to you on Twitter or followed each other or something, and I knew it was like, that's who I want for Swamp Thing. So it worked out perfectly.
And we had originally talked about Alien, because Alien is probably my favorite horror movie of all time, or sci-fi movie of all time.
Yeah.
it never worked out. But this one, I'm glad it did, and I definitely want to come back for Return of Swamp Thing.
Yeah, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So,
yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, so we'll be back with Conan the Barbarian. So, slight departure, but that's a fun movie.
Yeah, I think I've seen the second one. I haven't seen the first one.
I've seen parts of both of them enough to know the premise and be confused about which movie is which. That's about as far as I know.
Well, the first movie is written by Oliver Stone, and the second movie, So the first one is pretty amazing.
That's crazy.
Second one is like it's kind of seems like we got 6 months, let's throw a movie together. Oh, we got Wilt Chamberlain, great. Like.
My expectations are right at Hercules Goes to Manhattan.
Okay.
So that's the last Schwarzenegger
thing
that I saw while flipping through TV.
Nice.
And it was awful.
Well, so we will be back with Conan the Barbarian. And until then, just find us online. We're at Real Comic Heroes on Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. So, yeah, that'll do it.
See you soon. Ooh.
Hey citizens, Travis here. I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Comic Book University and say thanks to Rob and Derek for letting us use the store to record. If you're ever on the south side of Indianapolis or Greenwood area, I highly recommend checking out their store. You can find them online at comicbooku.com.
Fire and wind come from the sky, from the gods of the sky. But Crumb is your god. Crumb, and he lives in the earth. Once giants lived in the earth, Conan. And in the darkness of chaos, they fooled Crumb. And they took from him the enigma of steel. Crumb was angered, and the earth shook. And fire and wind struck down these giants, and they threw their bodies into the waters. But in their rage, the gods forgot the secret of steel and left it on the battlefield. And we who found it are just men. Not gods, not giants, just men. And the secret of steel has always carried with it a mystery. You must learn its riddle, Conan. You must learn its discipline. For no one in this world can you trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust.
Between the time when the oceans drank Atlantis and the rise of the sons of Arius, there was an age undreamed of. And unto this, Conan, destined to bear the jeweled crown of Aquilonia upon a troubled brow. It is I, his chronicler, who alone can tell thee of his saga. Let me tell you of the days of high adventure.